In all of Homer's writing, every battle, every shore, the sky is never blue. The sea, in his lines, is not blue either. It is oinops, wine-faced, wine-dark. Bronze flashes, horses foam. Dawn opens her fingers over the world. Sheep can be violet. Storm clouds, blood, waves, and rainbows move through color words that do not behave like ours. In 1858, William Gladstone, a future British Prime Minister, noticed this, and he asked a question that should have stayed buried. Were the ancients colorblind? Or were they seeing through a system we forgot how to read? Victorian scholars took Gladstone's observation much too far. Some argued that early peoples could see brightness and darkness, shine and shadow, but had not fully developed the ability to perceive hue. In other words, maybe Homer's ocean was wine dark because Homer's eyes were not quite finished. That conclusion was wrong, deeply wrong. The ancient Greeks were not colorblind. Their retinas were human. Their cone cells were human. The biological machinery was the same machinery we carry now. But the mistake hides a sharper truth. Language does not decide what light enters your eye. It can decide what your mind does next. Do we see the world first and name it later? Or do our names teach attention where to stop? More than a century after Gladstone, psychologists went to northern Namibia, where the Himba live among red earth, dry grass, cattle, goats, and desert light. The Himba do not divide color space the way English speakers do. One major term, Buro, covered a blue-green region that English splits apart. This is where the internet version of the story usually becomes ridiculous. The Himba were not unable to see blue. They were not staring at the sky in confusion. The real finding was subtler. When two colors crossed a boundary English marked strongly, English speakers tended to notice that difference faster. But when two colors crossed a boundary Himba terms marked strongly, Himba speakers had the advantage. The light was the same, the eyes were the same, the categories were different. And categories are not passive. They are little machines inside attention. They tell you where one thing ends and another begins. Color is a continuous field of light. There is no natural fence saying, here, exactly here, blue begins. We put borders into that light, teach children the borders, and then the borders start to feel obvious. Language does not create the world from nothing. It changes the friction of thought. Why would one language cut the spectrum one way and another language cut it differently? Not because one people is advanced and another is behind. That is the old trap. The better answer is that language grows around use. At the edge of the Namib, color is attached to repeated problems: iron red soil, dry riverbeds, yellow-green shrubs, dust, cattle hides, goat coats, milk, blood, butterfat, ochre. The Himba are famous for ochize, a red ochre and butterfat paste worn on skin and hair. A distinction becomes useful when people need to make it again and again. Then look at Egypt. Ancient Egyptians produced a synthetic pigment we call Egyptian blue, a durable blue made through heat, minerals, and craft. Blue was difficult, precious, divine. A society that manufactures a color eventually needs to name it, trade it, and symbolize it. Nature supplies the light. Culture decides where to put the borders. But there is a darker part of this story. Human beings have a talent for turning their own categories into a test of other people's minds. Gladstone began with philology, a careful reading of ancient poems. But in the 19th century, the question quickly became tangled with empire, evolution, and hierarchy. No word for blue became no perception of blue. Different categories became less developed mind. A difference in language became evidence in a story Europe was already telling about itself. We know better now. Or at least, we should. Homer was not visually unfinished. He was not seeing badly. He was seeing through another system of attention. Maybe the sea was not blue or not blue. Maybe it was dark like wine, flashing like bronze, purple with storm, black under night, white under foam. Maybe Homer was seeing perfectly well. He was just not seeing through us. And this mistake did not die with Victorian color theory. It comes back whenever a culture mistakes its own labels for the structure of reality. Researchers later studied cognition among the Kapeli people of Liberia. In one sorting task, participants were given objects and asked to group what went together. Western researchers expected taxonomic categories, tools with tools, food with food. But many Kapela participants sorted functionally. A knife goes with an orange because the knife cuts the orange. A hoe goes with a potato because the hoe digs the potato. A container goes with rice because the container carries the rice. To the researchers, this looked like a failure to abstract. Then someone changed the question. How would a foolish person do it? The Kapeli participants immediately sorted the objects into the expected piles. They had understood that system all along. They simply did not think it was wise. Only a fool would separate the knife from what it cuts. The researchers thought they were measuring cognition. They were also measuring obedience to an invisible cultural instruction. Sort like us, name like us, see like us, think like us. Every label hides a politics of attention. Every data set says, these are the differences that matter. Everything outside the label quietly becomes background. Now slow down. Look around you. The wall, the light, the shadow under your hand, the color of your own skin in this room at this hour. Photons enter the eye. Cone cells respond. The brain begins its work. But the world does not arrive already divided into ready-made colors. A word is a handle. Without the handle, the thing may still be there, but it is harder to pick up. That is much bigger than color. Is there a word for waking at 4 in the morning and realizing your life has drifted far from the one you meant to live? Is there a word for watching someone you love become a stranger through tiny daily withdrawals? Those feelings do not begin existing when they are named. They were already there. Their light had already been falling on you. But a name lets you stop. A name lets you say, there, that, again. The ancient Greeks were not blind to blue. The Himba are not blind to blue. And you are not blind to the unnamed parts of your own life. But you may be moving past them at speed. So, what color was the sky before we named blue? The sky was doing what it had always done, scattering shorter wavelengths of sunlight through the atmosphere. The sky did not change. We did. We made a border in the light. We gave the border a name. And after that, everywhere we looked, there it was,